Take a moment, look at the disclaimer. This content is for educational, informational, entertainment purposes only, and nothing should be taken as a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any securities at any time. We're here just to tell you how BTA look at the markets, how we analyze the markets, but nothing should be taken as a recommendation. This is Rod from BTA, and we are known as the Middle Traders. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. We're going to be looking at the weekly charts of the major market index ETFs. So right here we have a chart of the DIA. Okay, the DIA, the ETF that tracks the Dow Jones Industrial. Look, make it short and sweet. We seen on the daily charts, put up a video yesterday stating that the market has gone nowhere. Okay, it's gone nowhere. It's moving sideways. We're caught in a sideways consolidation. And if you look at this weekly chart of the DIA, I'm gonna zoom in so we can see it good. If you look at this weekly chart of DIA, then you see that we've been moving sideways for almost the last 2 weeks. All right, well, we're trying to complete the second week now. All right, this is this week's action. Started on Monday. Okay, this is this week's action. We opened up on Monday right here. And we had a short trading range so far. We haven't, the range is very small. It's short right now. Okay, let's see what happens as the week go on. Okay, but notice that here is our pivot. The close of this week was our pivot. Let's put a horizontal line right across there. Okay, so we have been closing for the last 2 weeks below the pivot. Well, last week and so far this week, we've been below the pivot. Okay, so here's the pivot point. That's our buy point where we was looking to possibly go long the DIA according to this strategy, the Bollinger Band RSI stochastic strategy. So here's our Bollinger Band up top, right? So right now, last week and so far this week, we're below the pivot point, the buy point. If you notice, the RSI is having a lot of trouble getting above this dashed horizontal line, which is the 50 level, which is our 50 level on the RSI. This is the RSI right here. On the stochastic, well, the stochastic line, this blue line, this royal blue line, it is trying to get above 50. That's telling us that over the last 14 weeks, prices are closing a little higher within this range. It's at 49.4 right now. So it's almost over the 50-yard line. But the momentum is not there. If you look at the RSI is not getting above 50. That's showing us that the sellers, the bears, are still in control of the momentum. Okay? So the DIA is moving sideways. We can't get above the buy point. And what we got to keep an eye on is that 8-week moving average. So we see the structure here with the price bars as far as the Bollinger Band strategy is concerned, hitting the buy point. But let's look at these moving averages. Remember that 8-week moving average, okay? And that 13-week moving average? Well, here's our chart, our weekly chart with our moving averages on there, okay? Notice the green line is our 8-week moving average. The green moving average line is our 8-week moving average. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see it better. So here's our 8-week moving average right here. It's a downward trending 8-week moving average. We're above it, but look at this overhead resistance at the 13-week moving average, okay? So the 13-week moving average is acting as overhead resistance. The 8-week moving average is trending down. Right below the 8-week, we got the 100-week moving average right here, this magenta line. And we got the 4-week moving average just below that. So right now, We're squeezed between a downward trending 13-week moving average. We're sitting right above a downward trending 8-week moving average. And the 100-week moving average is acting as support. So now this is the thing. If we start breaking below, this is last week right here. If we start breaking back below last week's low, if prices break below last week's low, we got to look out. It might be a problem, okay? Because at that point, we'll be breaking below the 100-week moving average, and we'll be sitting right on top of the 4-week moving average. So I'm telling you, we got to look out for a break below last week's low. If that happens, I think we're going to be in a little trouble, okay? We have to watch out, all right? But remember, anyway, with the Bollinger Band strategy, we're not supposed to break below the low of any previous week. That's our stop, get out no matter what level, okay? So if we break below last week's low, which is right here, and we'll be getting below the 100-week moving average on the DIA, and we'll be almost breaking below the 4-week moving average, that's a problem. So that low, the low of last week's low is at 325.36. 325.36. That's where, if we break that, the DIA is it's probably gonna be in trouble. Okay, and let's look at the SPY, the SPY, the ETF that tracks the Standard & Poor's 500. Okay, let's start off with the Bollinger Band strategy. And let's see how we're sitting with the Bollinger Band strategy with the RSI. So here's the weekly chart of the SPY, the ETF that tracks the Standard & Poor's 500. And up top, as you know, we got our Bollinger Band strategy right here. Okay, so we're still above the lower band, all right? But look at the middle line of the band. It's still pointing down. But the main thing that we want to take a look at is, what is price doing, okay, since we came above the lower Bollinger Band? All right, and the RSI got back above 30. Well, this is this week's action. This little dash line to the left is where prices opened up on Monday. But look, we are still below the buy point. Okay, we're still below the pivot. Let's put a horizontal line right across the buy point. Well, that's the buy point. You see, prices are closing below the pivot point. So far, last week we couldn't close above it. This week we're trading below it. Okay, and notice the RSI down here. The RSI is having trouble trying to get above the 50 level. It's going flat. This dashed horizontal line is our 50 level. That's our 50-yard line. We want to get on the right side of that. If we're above this dash line, that's telling us that the momentum is more to the upside. The buyers, the bulls, are more in control of the momentum at that particular time. Okay, we're below that right now. So the sellers and the bears are still holding control of the momentum. Here is the stochastic. Okay, the stochastic is pointing up, which means that we're closing higher and higher within the range, okay, over the last 14 weeks. But we're still below the 50 level. Prices are moving sideways. The prices are moving sideways. Like we said before, it's not going anywhere, okay? But it's going to have to do something sooner or later, all right? So we got to keep an eye on this thing. The momentum is slowing. Prices are moving sideways. All right, let's look at the moving averages real fast for the SPY. All right, here's our chart of the moving averages, okay, for the SPY. And notice, it looks similar to the DIA. Let's expand it so we can see it a little better. Okay, notice that we have that downward trending, that green line, that downward trending 8-week moving average. Here's that downward trending 13-week moving average, okay? Price is sitting right on top of this downward trending 8-week moving average. Here's the low of last week. We're not supposed to close. If this rally is going to have some legs, okay, we shouldn't close below the low of any previous week, okay? We start closing below the low of the previous week, then we know we got an issue. So the low of last week is at 406.93. 406.93. If we break below the low of last week, right here, that means on the SPY also, we're getting back below the 100-week moving average, and we're probably going to be breaking below the 4-week moving average, right below it. That's going to be very negative for the SPY. If that happens, we got to look out below. We might start coming back down here testing these lows. All right, so we got to watch the low of last week on the DIA and the SPY. The low of last week, if we start breaking below that, it could be a problem. All right, and we always going to keep an eye on our daily chart every day. We stuck within the channel, so we're going to keep an eye on our daily chart every day, and we're going to keep an eye on lowest, because we know lowest is sitting right below support on the daily charts. So now let's look at the QQQ and see what that looks like. Okay, so the QQQs is not looking much better. All right, this is the ETF that tracks the NASDAQ 100, the triple Qs. This is what we trade when we want to trade and invest in the NASDAQ 100. It pretty much tracks the NASDAQ. Okay, so let's first put our horizontal line right across the top, right across the pivot point. There it is, and we can see that prices last week closed below the pivot point, our buy point right here. And so far this week, we opened up above it, but we pulled right back. Well, we said it was starting to move above the pivot, right? We saw that, but we talked about the volume. The volume was not there. The QQQs have the on-balance volume line is telling us that the large institutional investors are not buying in. There is no volume, and the volume bars are getting lower and lower on the daily charts. So there's no institutional participation. They're not buying this thing, okay? So even though we closed higher than the close last week, we hit the pivot, we said, no, we can't do that because we can't make this pivot because there's no volume. So look at the RSI. The RSI, as you see, we still below 50. This is the dashed line, okay? So the sellers, the bears, are still in the control of the momentum. Look at the stochastic. It's trading. It's moving up, but it's well below 50. Okay, the MACD is not really gaining any momentum either. Look at the MACD line. It's still well below its signal line. We need that to cross above the blue line. We need the brown line to close above the blue line to cross above the blue line to tell us that some momentum is starting to come into this thing. Okay, that's called a bullish crossover on the MACD. We don't see that. So we see prices are moving sideways. We still below the buy point. The Bollinger Band is pointing down. That's another thing. The Bollinger Band is pointing down. Okay, if you look at the direction of the band itself, it's pointing down, and it's doing that for the DIA and the SPY also. Look at the direction of the band. Okay, look at the direction of the band for the Q. It's doing the same thing for the DIA and the SPY. It's pointing down. Okay. So the band is pointing down. All right, that's not good. All right, now let's look at the moving averages for the QQQs. Okay, let's look at the moving averages. Look what's happening for the Qs with the moving averages. Okay, let's expand this a little bit so we can see it. The moving averages are telling us that this thing might be in trouble, okay? Look, the 9-week moving average on the Qs, price is closed below the 9-week right now, and we sitting just above the 4-week moving average. So in the 21 and the 13-week moving average is right above head, okay? It's a good distance away, okay? That's because the momentum to the downside is becoming so strong. But the problem here on this chart is this downward trending 8-week moving average that we're closing below it. We've been below it, and we can't seem to get above it, okay? We haven't gotten above this downward trending 8-week moving average for 1, 2, well, actually, we broke below it over here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks. And we still below this 8-week moving average, okay? And now we're testing this 4-week moving average. So if we break below the low of last week on the Qs, if we break below the low of last week, we're going to still be below this 8-week moving average if we break below this low, okay? And then we're going to probably be trying to get below this 4-week moving average. That's not good, right? It just ain't no good. I'm telling you, it just ain't no good, all right? It is pressure on this market right now. Look at the low of last week. It's 303.40. That's the low of last week. We should not be breaking below the low of any previous week. It's just not looking good. All right. So this weekly Bollinger Band, the moving averages on the weekly chart. This is the weekly chart of the Qs without moving averages. It's not looking good. Remember, go back on the page in the YouTube channel and look at. I told you that it's a cloud overhead. It's looking stormy. We got a cloud overhead. Like my mama used to say, Shiraz, a cloud, it's a storm a brewing out there. Okay, it's a storm a brewing, all right? Cloudy. Well, I don't know if it's going to be a storm, a little rain shower, or a hurricane, as Jamie Dimon said, but it don't look good. It's a cloud overhead. And right now, you see the weekly moving averages and the weekly Bollinger Band is telling you that is not looking that good, okay? And the momentum on the weekly chart is telling you it's not looking that good, okay? So if we break below the low of last week on the Qs, which is 303.40, it could be a problem, all right? Look at the volume. Look at the volume bars on the weekly chart, okay? We're trying to go up. We're trying to go up, but the volume bars has been getting lower and lower and lower on the weekly chart, okay? That's not good. What's one of the forms of weakness? Go back and look at the study cards we got on the website. Go on browntradingacademy.com and go into the study card, the flashcard section. Hit the flashcards. We got it right there. One of the forms of weakness, one of the forms of it is a rebound rally on low volume. A rebound rally on low volume. You seeing that on the daily charts, and now you see it on the weekly chart. It's looking the same for all the major ETFs. The on balance volume line is also showing you the same picture. So be careful, okay? Be careful. Listen, we're going to stop here, and we'll pick it up on part 2 with the IWM, okay, and the ITOT. We'll finish up with the IWM and the ITOT. But as you can see, the Qs, the Dow, and the Standard & Poor's, the DIA, the SPY, the SPY, and the QQQs are not looking good on the weekly charts. One thing I would like to do real quick, okay? Notice on the Qs, and I'm gonna go over that real quick on the DIA and the SPY also. Look at the Qs right here, all right? I'm gonna bring this up so you can see it. Look at this weekly. I didn't go over the structural chart. Sorry about that. Look at this weekly horizontal support level right here. It's a weekly horizontal support level at 303.50. Notice that weekly support level is right on the low from last week. Okay, that's a fractal. That's a fractal, weekly fractal support level, horizontal support level, and it just so happened to be right on the low of last week, okay, right here. So I talked about breaking that low. You can see that this is a weekly fractal. That fractal is way back there, okay? This is a long-term weekly horizontal support level. We start breaking that, it's not going to look good. All right, we was in this downward channel, as you can see. We was inside of this downward channel, okay, on the Qs. Right? We was inside. I drew that terribly. Okay? Terrible. All right. So here's the downward channel on the Qs. We was inside of that. We got above this upward trending trend lines. Okay. We broke out of that. All right. We broke out of that and we got above overhead resistance. This 303 was acting as resistance at that time. We got above that and we closed above it. So far, we're still above it. But if we start breaking back below that, that's a problem. So 303.50. The low of last week is a weekly, long-term support level. We don't want to break it. All right. Let's jump back to the SPY real fast and see what we got on the structural charts for the SPY. Not good. Not good. Straight up. Straight up. Okay. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. All right. Here we got overhead horizontal resistance levels at 414. This level 414. The next level is 418 and 423. Well, guess what? We can't get above the first one, which is 414.70. We just peaked above it 2 weeks ago. Last week we couldn't get above it. We closed below it. This week we opened above it, traded above it a little bit, and now we're back below it. This is acting as resistance, okay? And then we got this downward trend line, okay, going across the highs, all right? We have to be careful because even if we get above this 414 and this 418, we still got this downward trend line, and we got 423 right over top. And then we're going to be looking at our 13-week moving averages, a 30-week moving average. Listen, it's a lot of overhead resistance. Truthfully, for this market to go up, it got a lot of work to do. Straight up. That's straight up, okay? So be careful out there, all right? It's a storm a brewing. As my mama used to say, it's a storm a brewing out there. All right, so here's the DIA, right? Here's the DIA. This is the weekly chart of the DIA, okay? Look at that overhead long-term weekly resistance area at 331.35 right here. This is a weekly level at 331.35. That's a long-term resistance level, a fractal going way back months ago, okay? It's a fractal level right there at 331.35. We peaked our head above it 2 weeks ago. For last week and so far this week, we can't stay ahead of it. Okay, so the DIA is looking similar to the SPY. Okay, we right at overhead resistance. Okay, we can't seem to get above it. So that's the structural levels. So listen, we got a lot of issues right here. There's a lot of issues right here. I would be very careful. Okay, we're gonna be careful. Okay, listen, we start breaking below the lower last week. Start breaking below the lower last week. Start breaking support. It could be a problem, as my mentor used to say. Okay, see you in part 2. We're gonna look at the ITOT and the IWM.